I'm so excited to share some cozy fall decorating ideas using Dollar Tree window clings. These budget-friendly DIYs are perfect for adding seasonal charm to your home without spending a lot. I'll be using items like window clings and more to create easy, beautiful fall decor anyone can make. If you love creative seasonal decor on a budget, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more. As soon as you walk in my local Dollar Tree, they always have a display up with some of the dishes that they tend to switch out for the different seasons. I saw this plastic tray there and I really liked the shape of it. I liked the little dots or knobs around the outside, but I wasn't in love with the fact that it was clear and the knobs were gold. So I took it outside and I gave it 2 coats of this Rust-Oleum spray paint. The color is Blossom White and it's a satin finish, so it has just a little bit of shine to it. I think the spray paint made such a difference on this plate. It was really an upgrade and I really love the detail around the edge of it. Now to finish this craft, I'm going to use a larger window cling from this pack. You can see this one in the center is kind of the focal point and it is a little bit bigger. I'm also going to be using some ribbon from the Dollar Tree and a few bunches of flowers. My favorite way to adhere window clings to different items is to use some Mod Podge. Throughout this video, I'll be using the matte Mod Podge on all of my projects, but feel free to change up whatever finish you'd like. I also want to mention that the 2 packs of window clings that I showed in the intro to this video are the only 2 packs that I actually bought this year. So those are the brand new styles for this year. Some of the window clings that I'll be using were from past years. I just have them in my craft stash and I really want to use them up. But the great thing with these projects is you can switch it out to whatever window clings that you already have on hand or whatever ones you find in the store this year. So to get this started, I just added a very light coat of Mod Podge to the back side of my window cling. And the great thing with this is because it's plastic, the Mod Podge doesn't wrinkle the material the way it does when you're using thinner paper or napkins. But I always like to add just a very thin coat. You don't need a whole lot of it to get it to stick to the plate. While that was drying, I got to work creating a decoration for the top of my plate. I have 2 bunches of flowers here, and if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know I've always said that I'm not the greatest at floral arranging. So whenever I pick out bunches of flowers, I always like to look for ones that have a bunch of different elements on it. So these ones have flowers and leaves and little springy things and then long pieces of grass. So it just makes it a lot easier when there's already a bunch of different colors and textures in a bunch of flowers. I did clip off some of the excess stem on these flowers because I wanted it to be a bit shorter so that it would fit at the top of my plate. Before I hot glued the 2 ends of the stems together, I did a quick measurement on my plate just to make sure that they would fit across and they wouldn't be spread out too far. Once I had some hot glue, I just used some clear tape to hold that in place while that glue set up. And then to make sure that you don't see any of those stems or that glue or that tape under the bow, I took a piece of the ribbon that I'll be creating a bow with and I just hot glued that around the 2 stems also, just in case you would see it behind the bow. I wanted to create a simple bow because I didn't want to cover up the window cling that was on my plate. So I cut one length and I looped it over and I made sure that it was a good width to fit on with my flowers. And then I cut 2 more pieces the same length. So I had 3 pieces all together that were the same length. Then I took 2 of those lengths of ribbon, I looped them over and I just pressed them down to make the wires crease a bit on the end so that they would stay in place. I stacked them next to each other and I used a piece of cording and tied it in the center. Then I took that 3rd piece and added that to the middle also, but I didn't loop that piece over. That's going to be my tails. Once I had that 3rd piece tied on, then I just fluffed the loops of my bows back up and I had a really simple double bow. To finish off this craft, I added a bit of hot glue to the backside of my flower bundles. I placed those near the top of the plate, and then for my bow, I added hot glue to the back of it, and I made sure that it was at the very top of the plate so that most of the bow went above the window cling and then above the plate so that I could really show off that image in the center. Then I don't know about you, but I have this random bag of fall flowers laying around. They're little pieces that I've taken off of other bunches, and I just wanted to add a little touch to the center of my bow, so I picked out a flower that matched and I just hot glued that to the center. Now, if you wanted to, you could create a hanger for the back side of this plate and hang it like you would hang a wreath or a piece of wall decor, but I'm going to use one of the photo easels from the Dollar Tree to display mine. Dollar Tree always has a great selection of lanterns, and if you go over to the kitchen section of the Dollar Tree and grab a pack of their flexible cutting mats, I'm going to show you how you can use those with some window clings to give a lantern a slight upgrade. I started by measuring the sides of my lantern. This one has a nice flat front on it, and I only measured up into the point where the lantern started to curve. So for this smaller lantern from the Dollar Tree, one side measures 4 inches by 7 1/4. Then I wanted to cut my chopping mat down so that I had 3 panels that would fit inside of the lantern. Now, even though the measurements were 4 inches by 7 1/4, I wanted to make my panels just slightly smaller so that there was no tension when I tried to put them inside. So I cut my panels down to 3 3/4 inches by 7 inches and hang on to the scrap pieces that you cut from the cutting mat, because I'll be showing you how you can use those for another project. So you can see here, because I cut these panels down by 1/4 inch, they had no issues with sliding inside. And I think these cutting mats are perfect for this because you can see through them, but it's nice and cloudy, so it gives the lantern a really unique look. I'm also using some Velcro. This is actually from the Dollar Tree in the Crafter Square section. It was just a little bit too wide for my project, so I cut the length that I needed that would fit across the top of the lantern, and then I cut just a little bit off of each side of the Velcro so that you wouldn't be able to see it through the front. I repeated that 2 more times so that I would have 3 pieces of Velcro to fit my 3 panels. Now, even though this is a 4-sided lantern, I'm only creating 3 panels so that I can access the inside of the lantern so that I can place the panels, and I can also put a candle on the inside too. A battery operated candle, I should say. The panels from the chopping mat really blend into the background of my work surface, but I do have one laying there, and I just added a small bead of hot glue across the top, and then I laid half of the Velcro down into that hot glue across the top. Then the other half of the Velcro, I wanted to hot glue to the inside of the lantern, and I just had to take my time here. It was a little tricky getting the glue gun in there so that I could get some hot glue, but I placed the glue as close as I could towards the top of the lantern, and then I just went in with the other half of that Velcro strip and pressed it into the hot glue. You've probably already guessed this, but the reason I'm using the Velcro is because I'll be able to create multiple panels for this one lantern. Every time they come out with new window clings for the new season or the new holiday, I can buy a new pack and I can just create a few more panels, and I'll be able to take them out and replace them with different ones for the different seasons. I cut a piece of white cardstock the same size as my chopping mat panels because I didn't want to run the risk that I would put window clings on the chopping mat and then they would get blocked by the lantern. So I slipped that inside, and then I just used a marker to trace the shape of the window that's on the lantern. And this way I can line it up with my panel because the cardstock and the panel are the same size, and I'll know where to place my window clings. But because of the slippery surface of the chopping mat, the window clings didn't stick on their own. So I did have to go in with a little bit of Mod Podge on the back side of the window cling just to make sure that it would stay on the panel. And I repeated that on all 3 panels. And this is a great way to use up some of those window clings that are smaller. I know all the packs have different sizes and different shapes in them, and a lot of times they come with really big ones, but then there's also a lot of really cute small ones in a pack. So this is a good way to use up some of those. Now I kept mine pretty simple. I just added 1 or 2 window clings to each panel, but you could fill it up as much as you'd like. And you could even take this one step further and make a really pretty bow or something to go on the top of the lantern. After I had all of my panels decorated with the window clings, I was able to just slip them inside, and the Velcro at the top held them in place. And then I did put a battery operated candle in through the back so that it could shine through the sheerness of the panels from the cutting mat. Like I mentioned, I want to show you how you can use these scrap pieces from the chopping mat, and I'm going to turn these into bookmarks. So you can see here I have 1 long strip and 3 square shaped strips. I cut my long strip in half to create 2 longer bookmarks, and then for the 3 square shapes I cut those in half also, so it gave me 6 shorter bookmarks. Now, because of the corners of the chopping mat were already rounded, I had some pieces that would have 1 round corner and the rest were regular. So I'm using a corner rounder. This is the one I have from We Are Memory Keepers. It has a 1/4 inch side and a 1/2 inch side. And it did a pretty good job of cutting through the chopping mat. I did have to trim off a little bit of the excess with my scissors. If you don't have a corner rounder, just take one of the rounded corners and place it over top of one of the sharp corners, and then just use your scissors to cut along the rounded corner. That way it'll give you the basic same shape that it already has. And for my bookmarks, I only rounded the bottom corners. I left the top corners how they were. Now you can start having some fun with all of those smaller window clings that come in the pack. I'm just using some Mod Podge and I'm placing them along my bookmarks. Some of them I layered a few window clings together, and other ones I just used one as a focal point. And this is a great craft to keep in mind if you have some kiddos that you like to create with. You could cut out the basic shape of the bookmarks and then just let them have fun adding the window clings however they like. At the tops of my bookmarks, I just punched a hole. You can use just a regular standard hole punch for this. It'll go through the cutting mat with no problem. And then I picked out a few fall themed ribbons and I strung them both through the holes, and then I gathered them at the top and tied them with a piece of cording. And then I just snipped the ends so that they were at an angle. You could get really creative with this if you wanted to and make some tassels for the tops of your bookmarks, but I really liked the fall ribbon, so that's what I went with. If you want to add a touch of fall to your kitchen, you can find these glass cutting mats at the Dollar Tree. They come in a round shape and also a square shape. For mine, I just grabbed 2 of the round ones. I'm not a fan of cutting on glass, so I'm not going to use these as cutting boards. I'm actually just going to use them as trivets. Now, on the bottom side of these glass cutting boards, there are some little plastic feet, and I'm only going to be working on the back side. I know it's hard to tell on camera, but I actually have these cutting boards flipped upside down. So the surface is laying down on my desk and those little feet are facing up. So as I'm placing the window clings down, I'm also placing those face down too, because I want the print to show through the top. And I'm only working on the back side so that I'm not going to get any Mod Podge on the top of the cutting board. Once I had the window clings laid out how I liked, then I started going in with my Mod Podge and sealing everything down. These glass cutting boards do have a texture to them. It almost looks like brush strokes. So I wasn't too worried as I was applying the Mod Podge. I did keep it fairly thin, but I wanted to really make sure that those edges were sealed down. And because of the texture of the glass, I wasn't too worried about blending away the texture from my sponge brush. These trivets were so quick and easy to make. Keep this in mind if you have some gifts you want to create for the holidays, or also keep this in mind if you like to make things to sell at a craft fair. I think these would go really well, and the cost of these is pretty low, so it would be an easy thing to make and sell. One of the easiest ways to use window clings is to give a little upgrade to some of the wood blanks that you can find at the Dollar Tree. I have this really neat palette style sign with a beaded hanger, and I'm going to use one of these window clings that has a really cute fall saying on it. You could Mod Podge the window cling right to the wood blank, but I thought maybe I would want to use the wood blank again for something else. So I'm cutting down a piece of the chopping mat so that it's about a 1/2 inch bigger the whole way around than the window cling that I picked out. Now you wouldn't have to use the chopping mat here. You could use a piece of cardstock, anything that would just make that window cling pop a little bit more, because a lot of these window clings have kind of a clear background, so they don't always show up on lighter surfaces. But I am using a little bit of Mod Podge just to add my window cling to my piece of cutting mat. And then to place the whole thing in the center of the wood blank, I'm just going to use a few glue dots. That way I'll be able to remove it later if I want to change it out for something else. You can also really go to town embellishing these wood blanks with paint, bows, ribbon, flowers, whatever you like. I like this craft because it came together really quickly, but if you had a little bit of extra time, you could add a lot more detail to it. Thanks so much for coming to hang out with me again today. I'm so happy to be crafting for fall. It's one of my favorite times of year. All right, everyone, I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one.